But anyway, why don't I get started? It'll be a little bit of back and forth, but I'm going to start off with this and define. There's a whole bunch of these definitions of mentorship, and I don't want to read through all of these, but it really is more than just an endpoint. It really is a process, and the process is development of an individual's career. And I want to stress that it really is the realization of that mentee's dream. It isn't the mentor's dream. It's very different, and it really is facilitating your quest to become whatever it is. And so this is a common theme. I'm going to, hopefully, by repeating this tells you how important it is, that it really is it's what you want. And I can't tell you what that is, but it's very important. And some of these are the definitions. Now, what mentorship is the following. And so you have managers, like kind of your clinic chief or your section chief, and the manager directs your work, all right? And those evaluations are performance, and it really is based on what the organization needs, what the division needs, what the hospital needs, efficiencies, RVUs, things like that. But that's who they're beholden to, right, is the, let's say, the hospital or the organization, not necessarily to you. Those are managers. Now, there's sponsors. Now, sponsors can actually be your division chief, and they're your champions. They actually focus on your career development, but their metrics and they're really on advancement goals. When I talk to my junior faculty, every time I have an annual review process, and the thing I always say is my job is to get you promoted, and so everything I'm talking about for the next half hour is about how we're going to get promoted, and then we for the next half hour to that we talk about other things other than promotion, but really those metrics are set on how do I get you promoted. And a mentor is different. A mentor, the idea of this is that it's someone who's going to guide and support you. It's somebody who will provide that professional support and personal development, which is different. The personal development, the personal interactions, that's different from a manager or a sponsor who really doesn't really deal with your personal issues. And the biggest thing, though, is that the focus is really on you, meaning you have to drive this. You have to decide what it is about an academic career that you want out of this. And you can see there's many ways of success. This morning session was all different tracks, but you have to decide which track and what is going to make you successful. So that's the difference between a manager, a sponsor, and a mentor. Now, the mentor team, I showed this picture once, but it's nice that it's not just one person. And this is a nice graphic. I apologize. I can't remember who I stole this from, but you have a lead mentor, you have co-mentors, and the connections to these people are quite concrete, quite obvious. But it takes a village, and you may have research mentors, and you may have research advisors, and you may have career advisors, and they all are very important. But the key thing is that it is a team, because it's very rare these days that one person can function in all those capacities. And so I think the old-fashioned view was that you would have kind of one person who was a little bit of an apprenticeship, and you're somewhat beholden to that person. In this modern period, we really are focusing and emphasizing these teams to ensure that you have the support from various people to ensure that you'll be successful in your career. And what I do sometimes is really take care to understand how to best match that mentee to the mentor. And one thing I really want to stress is that the mentor probably should be a senior faculty. And by senior, I mean an associate or full professor. And the reason for that is that many assistant professors are very enthusiastic, and they have that connection. But the problem is that an assistant professor, as we heard, their focus should be on their career. They're as a division chief, I'm very concerned to make sure they get promoted. So I really want them to focus on them. They should be the first author on their publications. They should be getting these kinds of grants. And the problem, if you have a mentor who's in that junior stage, they may not be focused on you. There may be times when they compete with you for that grant, all right? There may be times when they want that same position authorship on that paper, and that is not useful. So there's some exceptions to that rule, but in most cases, almost all cases, you really want somebody who has been already promoted to that position of associate or full professor. And then there's
just interject.
Okay, go ahead.
John, when I was a fellow and I was talking to the other fellows about who I should see would be my mentor, one of the senior fellows told me I shouldn't pick John because he was too junior, and that was really bad advice. So there are exceptions. Okay, so I'll tell you later who that was. But.
Yeah, good thing, yeah. No, no wonder I didn't get, except for the first time I came. No, but so the issue is that, yeah, there are exceptions, I must say, but in general, we like to see this. Now, there's actually been a lot of literature about how to match, meaning it should be, it helps to have the same background, the same training, perhaps same career interests, the same gender, race, ethnicity, because there's certain issues that are specific to some of these particular factors. But the biggest thing is personal chemistry. Because you're going to be spending time with this person. If you don't like the person, and this has already come up, if you don't like the person, if you don't really mesh well, then forget it. You have to have this connection because it's a commitment, and you have to get along, and you actually have to like each other. So that's important. I'm going to my last part, and then I'll have Joel make some comments. Is these phases of mentoring, and this is based on a body of work that's been done on mentorship. Mitch Katz actually was one of my classmates in medical school. Now he has a professorship and endowment at UCSF, and he focuses on mentorship. And so he's developed these things. I stole it from him. The initiation is this kind of honeymoon period, the first 6 months, maybe the first year, where really the issue is that the mentor is kind of doing everything, setting the stage, creating the infrastructure, providing the guidance, and the mentee at that point is kind of this completely unrealized potential. And so it's a exciting period, but at the same time, it really is that part. The mentor has to kind of drive this. The next part is really critical. This is the cultivation part, the 2 to 5 year period, and this is the most productive time, I think, of a mentorship. And that goes. You take a mentee who starts with just nothing but expectations, and then you have to convert that to a reality, some tangible evidence and progress, achievements, and realization of those goals, maturation of their goals. And that takes a lot. There's a function of career development. There's also psychosocial development. As we've tried to allude to, it's more, it tends to be even more than a professional relationship. There's a personal connection here that's very important in mentorship. The part that actually is sometimes very hard for mentors is that next part, the separation. I know a lot of good people who have a hard time, meaning people who are in the position of mentoring, who have a hard time giving up that mentee because, again, at some point the mentee makes you more productive. At some point, Joel writes more than I do, and I have to say, Joel, it's best if you actually don't put me on that paper. It's very hard for those mentors to do that, and you have to understand that separation is a difficult time, even especially for a mentor. But it's important because that mentee has to establish their independence, and that's crucial. And then finally, after the very end, there's a redefinition of this relationship. You can be friends, you can be colleagues, you can be collaborators. And I think this is the stage, let's say, where Joel and I are now. I'm going to talk about the first meeting. And this is the part, again, where the mentor takes the lead. That first meeting, you got to get to know each other. And again, I'm going to reiterate, there's this personal connection, different from other types of roles that you have in your professional life. You got to share yourself, what's going on, your common backgrounds, your interests, things maybe even outside the actual work environment. It's tremendously useful to learn about something about your mentor or your mentee. And then these guidelines actually, it seems almost too prescriptive, but they're very important. Just discussing where we'll meet, how we'll meet, how are we going to set up the agenda, how do we communicate between them? I actually had this rule, not just with Joel, but actually with all my mentees, is if this whole electronic revolution was new to me, even though I was an engineer. I would get multiple emails and texts, and I just couldn't do it. So basically, my rule is you get 1 email a day, right? And if you give me more than one email, I just delete the rest. And my mentees, I'm not sure you did this, but mentees would come to, did you get the email? It's like, well, was it your first one? He goes, no. Well, I deleted it. And the reason is because I can't, there's two reasons. One is because the new generation is different from my generation. We're not going to have generational differences. But I expect that people will formulate their own questions, and sometimes they can answer those own questions in that same day. And I prefer that they figure it out for themselves. And also, if they should be able to formulate kind of an entire day's number of questions into one cohesive email. And so that's why I did this. And that's just my style. I'm Basically, it shows how old I am. But that was one way. My communication was very strict about that. And it was a shock to some of the fellows and some of the junior faculty. That's the way I operated. Just one example. And then you have this partnership agreement. We'll talk about an independent development plan that's critical. And it really talks about, here's your immediate goals, your medium-term goals, your long-term goals, what you have, and what you need to get there. And those are the kind of things that are important. We'll talk more about that. And then you confirm the next steps. Like, we've done these things, we achieved these things. What happens next? When are we going to meet next? And what are how we're going to communicate between now and then? And so I'm going to take it over and give it to
Thanks, John. Here's some sort of general terms to sort of brainstorm thinking. What should the relationship be about? And the bottom line is building trust. So being a proactive listener, and basically these all are regarding both the mentor and the mentee. Cooperation versus competition, open sharing versus withholding, actions, like Yoda would say, there is no try, only do. Accepting and non-judgmental, authentic, admitting mistakes, actively seeking differences, respecting confidentiality. And I think one of the most important roles of the mentee, if the mentee wants to be productive, is to be proactive. You don't want to be sitting back passively waiting for the mentor to tell you what to do. The most successful mentors are ones where the mentee takes that initiative and says, this is what I want to accomplish. These are the agenda items I want to discuss, this meeting, or this is what I want to get done in the next year. How can I get there? What do I need to get there? And then the mentor is able to give insights and counsel about how to meet those sorts of objectives. So these are sort of ways to think about how you should be a proactive mentee, making sure that your objectives are clear, making sure you feel comfortable talking with your mentor. If you don't, then you might have the wrong relationship with the wrong mentor, because it really ought to be something where you feel comfortable to ask questions. There really are no stupid questions when you're talking with a mentor behind closed doors. Are you receptive to constructive feedback? Do I show appreciation and gratitude? The mentor is doing this really selflessly, particularly those first couple of years. In a good relationship, the mentor is not getting much out of it other than the self-satisfaction of seeing you succeed. And if it's sort of like you're doing a piece of a project for the mentor and it's not something that's necessarily going to lead towards your career goals, this is not something that's all that useful for you, and it really ought to be all about you. So have specific objectives. You'd like to identify quantifiable metrics. A lot of that has, if you're a junior faculty, that's going to have to do with items that you need to make promotion, but shorter term goals as well. Have a plan of how you're going to get there, and then every so often you should have a reality check where you look back to see, am I meeting those goals, and having that confidentially with your mentor. Am I getting to where I need to be, and if not, what do I need to do to get there? And the mentor's role throughout this is trying to identify how to be the greatest assistance to the mentee. So I think we can probably, for the most part, we can skip through this to the sake of time. But at the very bottom here, John alluded to Rhonda talked about keeping your CV up to date. Literally every time you get an abstract accepted, every time you have a manuscript accepted, every time you submit a manuscript, every time you get invited to give a talk, that day you should put it on your CV. Don't wait, because you're going to forget about it. And the independent development plan, same thing. That's where you meet with your chief, on an annual basis or semi-annual basis. You want to have that updated continuously, so that this is the things that I've accomplished, and these are the key points of what I've been doing. Managing expectations. You want to have conversations with your boss and colleagues. This is my goal for 5 years from now. This is what I want to attend, what we'll be able to obtain. And then matching to those expectations. Know your goals. The immediate ones, what do I need to get done in the next month, 6 months. The short term, over the next year or two. I would also have in here sort of intermediate, in the next 5 years, I want to have this grant where I'm doing this or that. And long term, this is the long sweep of what I expect to have my career over the next 10 years. This is where I want to be, 10, even 15 years. I think the 15 years goal is probably, it probably won't actually come to pass. You'll probably end up changing your mind what you want to do. But at least it gives you a trajectory to be aiming for. And be proactive with all this. And then John talked about the separation, that, there's this transition from formal to informal mentorship. And, for us, it was, we were having weekly meetings. Then John left for UCSF, and we were having weekly or biweekly telephone calls. And then, to the point where towards the end of my K award, it was more like, I don't know, once a month, once every couple months. And then I've got this really important career decision I need to make, and I make an appointment to talk to John. Or frankly, we'd meet at meetings like this where we get a chance to sit and chat and talk, where that gradual process where it's sort of letting go. And you want to have a checklist, discuss how to use your remaining time, ensure none of those goals are overlooked, and then also formally acknowledge or celebrate. This wasn't so much John, this was my administrative assistant, who was John's before mine, Brenda. When you submitted a grant, just submitting the grant, not even getting the grant, you did a grant dance, which I will not do in front of you, because this signified, number one, you got this thing off your chest, off your desk, and it's submitted, okay? That's a major accomplishment just to get it out of there, okay? And then it was a good luck thing that you have to do this dance because it worked for her for so many years. Yeah. You got to do this dance, and you looked ridiculous to get the, so you would get the grant accepted. All right.
Highly scientific.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about my separation. So Amnon Sonnenberg, it's an interesting thing. So my first job was at the University of New Mexico. My first co-attending was Amnon Sonnenberg. My first fellow was Hashem El-Sarrag. And so we were there I was there for 4 years, and Amnon was my mentor. And if you don't know Amnon, he's actually a physicist by trade, but probably one of the godfathers of outcomes research. And he basically looked at the pros and cons, and he told me the marginal benefit of staying is outweighed by the marginal benefit of leaving. I said, what the hell are you saying? But really it meant that, basically they're offering you a better opportunity in an environment that I can provide. And he says, I could teach you more, but you'll learn more there. You should go. And that was amazing, because it was in hindsight, I realized what a gift it was to have a mentor, be able to basically say, okay, whatever investment I made in you, that investment now is going to be owned by somebody else. It was remarkable. It's only in retrospect that I actually understand that. And then I was continued as a colleague, a friend, an advisor, and it's just amazing in retrospect how giving he was. And all I can do is try to pay it forward. So maybe, I don't know what Joel's going to do here. But.
Well, so I can't remember, what year did you go to UCSF?
It was 2005.
Yeah, so it was 1 year after I joined the faculty at Michigan. John was my mentor through fellowship, first-year faculty. He told me he was going to go to UCSF, and he had a great, it was an endowed professorship. It was, it was a fantastic deal, and I met that conversation with a lot of trepidation. That I hadn't gotten a K award yet. I wasn't sure how close he would continue to mentor me when he left, and I was anxious about it. It turned out, I often say, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because
John's leaving is the best thing ever happened to me.
Because John left, and I was still in communication with him, still having weekly telephone calls with him. He was still mentoring me very closely, and yet there was this appearance. Everyone else thought I was just doing this on my own. It was just effortless, and it cleared up a clinical space as well, where my research was in Barrett's. John was doing colorectal cancer and esophageal cancer, but with him leaving, I became the resident expert in Barrett's esophagus at my institution, and I've grown into that position as well. So a lot of people aren't so fortunate, and you have to figure out how are you going to have that transition, and I think that has to be an explicit conversation about as you become more independent, what is your niche going to be that's different from your mentors if you're going to be in the same location? Or are you going to leave and go someplace else? Or is there a chance that your mentor's going to get up and go? But I think the last one is actually pretty rare. So, but there you are, flying to San Francisco.
Right. So the only thing I was going to, the other good thing was that, Joel was always directing this. It's at some point, I was even having discussions, actually with Chung Ouyang, our division chief, and Chung thought it was, what Joel was doing was just too high risk. And I was thinking about it, and we were applying, we weren't getting what we wanted to get, but Joel was so passionate about this, he had to do this. And I said, well, how can you hold back this passion? If I assign him something, he just won't be passionate about it. And I recognized that, Joel really wanted this. And so I came back and I told Chung, you may think I'm crazy, but I'm sticking with my guns. Joel and I are going to do this, and we're going to just pursue this and to the very end. And it worked out beautifully, because the next year you got a K award, the AGA award, the ACG award.
I came home with all the awards in
exactly.
1 year.
So
but before that, there was 3 years of banging the head against the wall, of not getting grants, getting rejected.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that was not mentioned previously is that I think the most important thing that a mentor can give you, and John gave me, was a belief in you that's stronger than your own belief in yourself. And that gives you the courage to persist.
And the greatest compliment that ever was given to me was a very senior faculty in Barrett's came up to me and said, this guy, Joel Rubenstein, his work? It's fantastic. You should get to know him. And actually I said, I see what he's doing. It's great work. I agree. But it was fantastic because it really signified that I had done my work, that Joel had become an independent investigator, not associated with me, to the point where somebody who actually knew the field didn't realize that at some point we were associated. And I think that was the greatest compliment I could ever get. Actually, hopefully we have some time for questions or comments.